I've been fortunate these past 10 weeks to work as an intern for Paul Varant at his restaurant Perennial Varant. What makes Perennial Varant unique and exciting, aside from the incredible preserved food and the farm-to-table service, is that the entire kitchen is incredibly young, with none of the line cooks over 30. Even in management, few people are over 40, and this allows for a large amount of creativity and energy, but also the need for self-structure and discipline because youth can sometimes translate to unproductive. And for me, this makes the sous chefs even more impressive because they're also young, so they have to be controlling their peers and serve as an example of unyielding focus and discipline. As an intern, when I get to work, first thing I do pretty much every day is report to Ed Sura, 27-year-old PM sous chef, and he's been at the restaurant for about a year and a half and is formerly of Graham Elliott. This is the first sous chef position he's held. Yay, Ed! And he's held it since August, working his way up from the line, coming in early pretty much every day since they hired him, 2 hours earlier than anybody else, so I'm sure it was an easy choice for them when they were picking out who was most dedicated. I admire him the most out of anybody in the kitchen because I think he works the hardest. And it was easy to choose him for my interview over Paul Varant and over the other sous chefs because, not that they're bad managers, but I work with Ed so closely, I was curious to hear how he views his management as opposed to how maybe I receive his management, and I'm Ed's very first intern. And it's kind of fun because through this internship, I've grown a lot as a cook and as a person, and I've also had the pleasure and the honor of watching Ed kind of grow into this management position. And getting him to sit down with me was a challenge because it was really busy this week. But I kept bugging him, so Sunday we sat down, even though he really didn't want to. But I thought what was really interesting was by the end of this all, we had both taken this really cool chunk of maybe 20 minutes just to reflect on ourselves. And I could tell he kind of enjoyed it at that point. I asked him what the biggest challenges day to day were. And I'm not surprised that he said it was managing the people. That communication is hard with him, not because he has to deal, well, because he does have to deal with so many different types of people. He has to deal with the farmers, he has to deal with the customers, which can sometimes be frustrating. But most importantly, there's a big language barrier. He doesn't speak much Spanish, and we have a large dishwashing staff that are primarily Mexican and don't speak much English. A perfect example of this is there was a day a couple weeks ago where our female dishwasher came in maybe 5 hours early to try and pick up some extra hours, but we had 3 people there and we didn't need a 4th one. So Ed had to figure out how to kind of kindly get her out of there without being condescending and without yelling and get over this language barrier. And it's also difficult, Ed mentioned, to keep a good temper. So in this instance, he really had to hold back his anger and kind of try and piece together Spanish and English nicely, which I'm sure was just so frustrating for him. And it's also got to be hard, during service when the line cooks get irritable and uncooperative. Ed really has to bite his tongue until after service because if you single somebody out on the line, nobody's going to respect you and then nobody's going to listen to him. And although we've only worked together 10 weeks, I have seen him yell a lot less the past week, and I can tell he's been working on it a lot. And another challenge he had mentioned was motivating people. And he said when he started, it was hard because he was friends with all of them, and he found that threats did not work. He would try and scare people, but all it did was make them resentful and not want to work. So he said that he tries really hard now to keep the mood happy and positive, and he tries to reward people to make them work harder. I thought this was pretty cool when I asked him how he handles unpopular decisions with the line, because he is good friends with him. He just shrugged and he says he deals with it, that it doesn't matter what they think because it's the right decision. And, that's his personality, too, is he's very much comfortable enough in his own skin to do what's right and not what's popular. And I really, really admire that. The only thing that matters, he said, is respect. And as long as I don't lose their respect, everything's okay. And his philosophy about managing people is that if you give respect, you get respect. Because, and I quote, once you lose respect on the line, it's impossible to get it back and keep control. He makes most of his decisions either based on past experiences, or his gut instincts, which also kind of suits his personality. When he really doesn't know, he thinks, what would Paul do? And that's kind of what he goes with. His mentors he cited were Paul Varant himself, and from this he gets most of his cooking techniques, and also the idea of cooking out of fear, which I thought was interesting. As cooking kind of working as if somebody's constantly breathing down your back and is going to scream at you if you weren't doing a perfect job, which is, I suppose, really good and bad at the same time. I imagine it being very stressful and elevating your blood pressure a lot, but also you must just be churning out some really nice work. You know, if you're living in constant fear, you're going to work really hard. And he also cited Carlo, the other sous chef, as his mentor because Carlo's very good at communicating with people and has these really nice interpersonal skills, and can help, you know, when somebody's having a bad day. So he says he sometimes tries to pretend that he's Carlo, and when he has to deal with people and he doesn't know what to say. And if he needs advice, he goes to Carlo over Paul most of the time because Paul is so busy. And I asked Ed, this is my favorite part. I asked Ed what he wanted people to take from his management style, and he just laughed really hard and said, "Nothing. I hope they don't take anything. I don't know what I'm doing." He's still learning. This is his first position. It's only been about 6 months, but we talked about it and decided that if they had to take something from him, he hoped it would be intensity and focus. That you should work with the same self-discipline the entire way through service. For example, if you're slow and you only have a few tickets, you may be tempted to kind of half-ass them, and talk to your friends on the line instead of really like making everything perfect and beautiful. Same thing with a busy service. You may be tempted to just fly through things and get through your service, but you never know who's going to receive your food, and you never know if it's going to be a critic, and a bad review can kind of ruin your career. So having a good mindset I thought was really interesting. And this is a mindset I really want to achieve also. And if I want to succeed as a chef, it's a mindset I'm going to have to teach myself. And he's learned, he said, the most important thing he's learned is just because you can cook on the line and handle a lot of tickets does not make you a chef and does not give you the ability to run a kitchen. And as we were leaving, I had asked him how you cope with the stress, how do you cope with people kind of being angry at you all the time or being unpopular. And he said, you know, I smoke, but more than that, my very first cigarette after work, I always stand totally still and I reflect back on my day. And it was kind of then that we shared this nice moment, because after every day in the kitchen, he makes me draw a picture or write a paragraph of something I've learned, and sometimes I have to think really hard, because some days I've just been peeling mushrooms, you know, for hours. But it was kind of sweet because I know that him forcing me to do this is maybe his way of passing on his style to me, and for that I'm honored. And it was a really cool interview, and I hope people can take away a lot from him, because I think he's a really, really good leader. Thank you.